Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Using Data to Drive Business Growth. My name is Matt Weber, and I'm one of the Google-supported national trainers, and typically we travel around the country helping small and medium-sized businesses improve their digital strategy. But after COVID, we've adapted our content to make sure that it's available in webinar formats like this. I've been working in digital marketing for over 25 years, and I've helped industry of every size. This is one of my favorite presentations to do. You've seen a lot of research that shows over and over again that companies' marketing strategy outperform their competitors that don't. For anybody who wants to grow their business. Now, we're not really going to talk about data. We're going to talk our insights, because as the former chairman of Unilever said, data is heavy. It's insights that make you rich. Now, what do we mean by an insight? An insight is something, of course, that you didn't know before. It's novel, it's new, it's different. And of course, an insight has to be credible. Why do we believe what we believe? And then finally, an insight has to be actionable. When I'm not traveling, or I lead a digital marketing firm just outside of Orlando, Florida, come different reports about our clients and lots of data. And as they share these reports, I'm going to use one set of words. I'm simply going to say, therefore, for what? You see, data that doesn't actually improve anything anywhere to a specific action is really just interesting dinner party. Something to be an insight, it has to be actionable. So where we're going to go today, try to find insights that are novel, credible, and actionable. But I brought somebody else along for the presentation, and as I tell you about them, they to you. This is Tracy and Danny, and they're a mother and daughter team, and in class in 2010, and they loved it so much. They opened up their first cake/cupcake store in Massachusetts. And that patient grew. They not only got traffic to their store, but they their cupcakes all over the country, and that was a problem. You see, they couldn't these cupcakes and have them arrive fresh and intact. A cupcake needed to stay 7 to 10 days, and that's something I really couldn't empathize with, because I've never had a cupcake in front of me for 7 to 10 days. But that's when they came upon their big idea, and that's to put the content in a mason jar. And by filling these jars with layers of cake and frosting, the cupcake actually stayed fresh for 10 days without refrigeration, and now it can be shipped all over. Well, news spread about that innovation, and in April 2013, Tracy and Danny appeared on a show called Shark Tank. And Wicked Good Cupcakes became the go-to site for top-level, creamy, tasty cupcakes. Now, everything they do today is still homemade, baked from scratch mixes, but well before that Shark Tank success, Tracy and Danny at the exact location, the same one you're at. And what they did prior to the presentation, something that maybe some of you can identify with. They made a lot of their decisions with gut instincts. They experimented with a new recipe, and if they liked it, they immediately added it to the menu. And of course, what a lot of us do is when sales were down, what's the first thing they did? They cut prices. And they had a long-held assumption that their main target audience was women 35 to 54. Well, as you can tell, some of those assumptions may not have been correct. But like a lot of small business owners, they were working off of their gut and not working off of data. Now, before we talk a little bit more about working with data, let's define some terms that we're all on the same page. When I talk about data, that means that it is information that we've obtained from users, like demographic information and what they do on the website and activity and where they came from. When I use the word analytics, I'm often going to be talking about a pattern or a trend. And in website analytics, just like in stock picking, it's the trend that is your friend. We want to look at where things are going or where they came from rather than where they are. And then finally, we're going to highlight insights, which are putting all of that together into something that we have actionable value in. Now, if any of you attending the program today have been in Google Analytics at all, you know that there's quite a bit there. You know that it's just a giant forest. And if you've been looking around at all, it's easy to get lost. So today we're going to talk about how to not get lost in that forest of data. In fact, what we're going to talk about is how to focus on a specific pursuit or question rather than trying to absorb everything that all of this analytics data offers. In fact, when I work with small business owners, one of the things I hear more often is that they don't need more data, they're drowning in data. Their website's generating data, their CRM is generating data, their accounting package is generating data. They've got data everywhere, but they just don't really know what to do with it. So we're going to talk about today 3 steps to make sure that we don't get lost in that forest of data. We're going to talk about outlining goals, asking the right questions, and then viewing the reports to be able to look for the answers. So let's dive a little bit deeper, and let's start with goals. And of course, here's something that's been taught probably since you were in middle school or elementary school, and it's still valid today. And that's the SMART framework of goals. A good, in quotes, goal or a valuable goal is one that is specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time sensitive. Right? When a goal has all 5 of these characteristics, it has the most potential to bring you value, and it has the most potential to be something that we can attach analytics data to when it's properly formatted. Now, when we met with Tracy and Danny, they had a goal too, and their goal was to decrease shopping cart abandonment rate to under 60%. Now, we probably don't have a lot of e-commerce website managers on the program today, so abandonment rate is the percentage of people that put a product in a cart and then conclude the session without making the purchase. And that's a real problem for any e-commerce type website manager. So let's take a look at this goal from that SMART measurement framework. Is it specific? Yes. Is it measurable? It really is. Is it attainable? It's a little bit of a stretch goal, but that's not too bad. It probably is. Is it relevant to their business? Will their business be affected if they achieve this goal? Yes. Is it time sensitive? No, they missed it on this one. So this is where we went to Tracy and Danny and said, hey, we've got to put some time limits on this. Let's make this a goal within 6 months, and then we can map out an activity to get there. So step 1 at the end of this program is to define a goal for your particular website. What is it that you want to happen? Now, once you've articulated that goal, the next is to really ask questions. You see, and this is really important because if you just open up Google Analytics and try to absorb all of the data, you're likely to get frustrated and not come away with anything resourceful. But if we focus on a specific question, we can find the answer to that question and then bring value to that goal. Now, it's not just any old question like, what are your interests? And hey, how often do you come here? These are specific questions that relate to the data and analytics that you're going to see in Google Analytics. So let's go through them. There are reach questions, engage questions, convert questions, and sustain questions, which will only impact a few of you listening today. Reach questions are the type of questions that help you determine who visited your website and where they came from. So let's just say hypothetically that Tracy and Danny at Wicked Good Cupcakes, what their goal really was to increase online orders by 10%, which is a pretty common goal, by the way. One question they might ask is, how do people find me online right now? That's a reach question. How do people find me online? Because if we can discover how people find them, then we've got kind of a clue to figure out how we can get more of those people. A reach question might also be, who is my best buyer? Or who spends the most amount of time with my website? Those are reach questions. Now, engage questions, if you have a different goal, are questions about what do people do once they come to your website, right? Because any website's got two major challenges: attracting people and keeping people. And they're two different sports. So engage questions focus on, how do we keep people? What are they doing when they get to the site? What page do they leave the website from? What page do they spend the most time on? Do you have a video on your website? Do they watch that video, and is it bringing you value? Do you have a PDF on your website? Do they download that? You see, because the more we can give more content like the ones people are engaging with, and then take out the content that people are not engaging with, the more productive our website is, and most importantly, the more value it's bringing the visitors. And the more value it brings the visitors, the more likely they are to do the thing that we want them to do. Which brings us to the next type of question, which are conversion questions. Now let's take just a little bit step backwards. A conversion is the action that you've designed your website to take. Hopefully, your website was designed with a specific end action in mind. If everything went really, really well on your website for a visitor, what would they do? Do they fill out a quote form? Do they download a catalog? Do they click on directions to get to your brick and mortar location? What is the end of the desired pursuit for the people that come to your website? In fact, most great websites are designed with that last step in mind and then built forward rather than the other way around. So when someone takes that desired action, Google Analytics calls that a goal or a conversion. So conversion questions are about that end action, that last point in the journey. Like, which channels drive conversions? Meaning, you get traffic from organic search, you get traffic from paid search, you get traffic from social media, you get traffic from links on other people's websites. Which one's really generating the most conversions? And maybe you have more than one call to action on your website. Maybe you've got to sign up for our newsletter form, and you've got to click here to talk to a specialist form. Which one's working better? Which one's driving more actions? And then if you've really followed some of the deeper steps in analytics, and you've got some value of a lead data hooked up or value of a sale data hooked up, you can be asking yourself which channels actually have a higher ROI. Now, here's why this question, in fact, all of these questions are important. When I work with small and medium-sized business owners, sometimes I'm working with owner-operators. They're trying to do it all, and time is a premium. And one of the things these questions help you focus in on is, what's already working? Where am I sailing with the wind, and where am I sailing against the wind? And so I counsel small and medium-sized business owners and marketers to, let's stop sailing into the wind. These questions can reveal where you're sailing with the wind and do more of what's working and less of what's not working. I work with a lot of small and medium-sized business owners who are devoting a lot of time and money to social media. And when we explore questions like this, it's not bringing the conversions. So it's a quick pivot on the strategy to get more out of what they're doing. Now, maybe your website is the type of website that people come back to. Maybe you're a Chamber of Commerce website. Maybe you're an e-commerce website. Maybe you're a website with lots of resources that you want people to use, and they need to get different resources from you throughout the year. Sustaining questions are questions that ask, why do they come back? Or why don't they come back? So when they do come back, what do they do differently than when they came the first time? And what tends to attract them the second time differently than the first time? Do they come from a different channel? And then, are you giving people a reason to return to your website? So not everybody in the session today is going to have sustaining questions, but if you're the type of website that needs people to come back, then sustaining questions are going to help you define your goal and help you get to your goal. Now, the final step in this process, remember, we've established a goal, and then we've tried to ask some questions that help us get to the data and analytics that help us get to our goal. And now we're going to look for the answers to those questions by viewing reports in Google Analytics. And while there's a number of places that you can get really great data, for most small and medium-sized businesses, Google Analytics is the tool of choice. And you can find it at google.com/analytics if you haven't already installed it. And depending on your website and depending on your skill level, it'll take anywhere from 20 minutes to maybe an hour and a half to install Google Analytics. Now, it's possible to install Google Analytics without installing everything or without turning everything on. So you do want to make sure that it's installed fully and that everything is turned on. If it costs you a couple of hours with your current web development team or web developer, if you pay for that as an outside resource, this data is absolutely worth doing whatever it takes to make sure you get this data in your hands. So with Google Analytics, we can understand customers' demographics, their gender, their interests, what are they in the market for, whether our website's meeting their expectations or not. We can understand their user behavior. Do they go to page 1, to page 2? We can find how they found our site. And then, of course, we can measure whether or not they took that ultimate action, which hopefully is the one that drives value for your company. Now, there's a couple different types of insights in Google Analytics. And as you listen to these, you're probably going to start feeling that they line up a little bit with the types of questions that we're able to ask. And some of these insights are going to be relevant to some of you, and some they're not going to be relevant depending on your business and your website purpose. Let's talk about them in order, and let's start with real-time insights. Now, there's very few of you that are going to have value from real-time insights because they're showing what's happening on your website right now. But if you think about Tracy and Danny, and you think about when they went on Shark Tank, when they got hundreds of thousands of website visitors, then yes, they probably wanted to know what was happening in real time. Or maybe you drop an email blast and you want to see what the effect of that email blast is in real time, what's happening right now. Or maybe you've launched a social media campaign whose purpose is to spur instantaneous action. So that's a time when you're going to go into the real-time section on Google Analytics to see what's happening and where people came from. So you can get data instantly on the effectiveness of an email campaign or instantly on the effectiveness of a social media campaign. Conversion type data and conversion reports are key, and this is the second type of report that we're going to talk about. Remember that conversion is the completion of a desired action on behalf of your website user. Now, of course, for Wicked Good Cupcakes, it's a purchase. They want someone to order those cupcakes so they can be shipped to them. Now, this is where we're not going to look at an instantaneous piece of data, but rather than look at trends over time. In fact, one of the most important numbers you can pull out of this report is called the conversion rate, which is the percentage of website visitors that actually take the action that you want them to take. In fact, I think it's one of the top 6, 7 KPIs that any small and medium-sized business owner should know. Think of this the same way as if your company had a salesperson and you gave that salesperson leads, you would expect a certain closing rate. And you would expect that closing rate to be a measurement of how effective that salesperson is at convincing someone to do business with you as maybe compared to another salesperson or one that you've had previously. Your website conversion rate is exactly the same. How successful is your website at convincing people to do the thing that you want them to do? Now, there's a lot we can talk about in different sessions about what are those factors that impede a website from being successful at persuading people to take an action. But we have to know the number to begin with. We have to start benchmarking this. And I will say that whenever you add a step or a click, the harder you make it for someone to do what you want them to do, the less likely they are to do what it is you want them to do. So on your screen, you can see not only the conversion rate by channel, you can see the total conversion rate, 14.16% for this particular advertiser, which is Wicked Goods. And you can see how much revenue that pulled in. So in this case, it's an e-commerce website. So we're simply taking the revenue from each sale or conversion or goal and bringing that back into analytics. And then we can attach money, sales, revenue to each channel, paid search, organic search, social media, referrals. If you're not an e-commerce website, you can kind of do the same thing. Because if you know the value of a customer, then you can figure out the value of a lead. If you know the value of a lead, then you can assign a value to a conversion. And by the way, when you do that, it makes some of this data really easy to talk about, because then we can talk about every page in the website for its monetary value, right? If a page is never in the path of somebody that converts, it doesn't bring a lot of monetary value to the business. If another page is always in the conversion path, like people who do the goal are always visiting this page, that says, wow, this is a really high priority for the company, and we have to continue to perfect this page. So let's say you've got a website of 30, 40 pages. It's back to priorities. It's back to that limited quantity of time. How do we prioritize which pages we have to perfect? We perfect the pages with a higher monetary value, the ones that appear in the funnel more often than not. You know, it's 2020, and one of the things I want to make sure that people leave with is we don't market to everybody anymore. We only market to the people who are predisposed to buying what we're selling. So there's no reason to market with a shotgun. Now we market with finely tuned lasers. And in the audience reports in your Google Analytics, we can start zeroing in on who our best visitors are, on who the people are that do the thing that we want them to do. And so we can do that by demographic, we can do that by age, we can combine those two elements. And then we can also look at probably some more advanced factors, like what device did they come from? What location did they come from? What browser did they come from? And because we happen to leave our DNA all over the internet, we're able to see what people are interested in and what they may be in the market for. So over time, we begin to create a better persona or a better idea of who our best website visitors are. Now, armed with that data, all of a sudden, our marketing budget's going to change. Because instead of trying to get everybody in the world to be interested in what we do, we're going to spend more with the people who have historically demonstrated a predisposition to what we do, and our money suddenly goes further. Now, Wicked Good Cupcakes found this out in a really interesting way, and it was a dramatic change for them. They absolutely assumed that their best demographic was women 35 to 54. But once they started following the data more closely and looked at the analytics, they realized that their best consumer was actually a woman 25 to 34, much younger than they thought. And you can see that depicted right here. So what that allowed them to do is really change up some of their messaging. You know, it's very subtle, but probably on their website, they showed pictures of women 35 through 54. Their website didn't reflect who their best buyer was. And by making subtle changes like that, making sure the website reflects who your best buyers are, you can increase your conversion rate. Now, in the acquisition report, we find out where people come from. And here's another example of where you can spend your time more effectively. Right? If you know that your best traffic is coming from organic search, then, and you only have a limited time and budget to attack, then maybe that's the thing that you want to spend your time and energy on. Conversely, there are quite a few businesses that say, boy, ranking in organic search can be elusive, it can be difficult, it changes all the time. So rather than make that the pillar of their strategy, they say, listen, we're going to invest in paid search where we have more control, more finite control, and ultimately our ROI is going to be higher and we can react more quickly to any external changes. Either way, as long as it's based on sound data, either one of those strategies can work for you. So in this, we can look at what channel is driving not only the highest quantity of visitors, but more importantly, the highest quality of visitors. Now, there's a little bit of a trick here that is worth talking about. You see, we tend to oversimplify the journey. We tend to think, okay, user clicks on ad, user goes to website, user does the thing that we want them to do, and they achieve a goal. But in truth, most customers are far more complex. They do a search on their mobile device, and maybe they say to themselves, I should check that out. And then when they get home, they pop open their laptop and they go back to that website. Maybe this time they did an organic search for the brand name because this time they remembered it. And then this time they take the action. So if you think about that scenario where a user sees an ad, clicks on the ad, goes to your website, is interested, but doesn't take the action, and decides to come back later by searching your brand name, and then goes to the website and then takes the action, you can see where we'd get a false signal if we only looked at something called last click attribution. If we only looked at the world by looking at what was the last thing that they did before they got to the website where they took the action, in that scenario, we would have completely missed the value that paid search brought to that customer interaction. It was paid search that stimulated that user to come to our website the first time, even though they didn't take an action. So we can change what's called attribution modeling. And we can look at user behavior in a number of different ways. We can look at it from the last click, we can look at it from the first click, or we can look at it and say, if all of the different channels were in play and we divided the value up among all of them, what would that look like? So they become really good guidance and really good benchmarks about how to set our priorities and how to achieve our goal. The last report that we want to talk about is the behavior report. Remember, people are kind of funny sometimes, and ideally your website is set up so that they can discover content in a more detailed way by going deeper if they choose to. And you can actually watch them when they do this in something called a behavior flow report. So here on your screen, you can see that a lot of people in this particular case land on the homepage, and where do they go after that? Now, what's interesting here is sometimes these pages line up with the dominant navigation, but in this case, probably this page, maybe it didn't. So if a lot of people are flowing to this page, which is not in the main navigation, it's not served up easily to them. Now we might look at this and say, well, if they kind of fight and scratch and get to this page, what would happen if we made it easier for them to get to this page and we change the navigation? Because certainly there's the flow that you want people to take, and there's the flow that people end up taking based on the content that they see. So they can get to these interior pages either through internal links that you've put on those pages or through your navigation, or maybe your website has what's called an on-site search function. Maybe you've got a search bar on there that people can just put in what they want to that search bar and get right to the page that they're looking for. In any scenario, understanding how people travel the site and how they get what they want is key to ultimately reorganizing your navigation and perhaps even potentially reorganizing your content to serve the need of the user. In fact, we should pause here for just a second and look reflectively at how much marketing has changed on the observation that we're now making. You see, in marketing before, we would put out what we wanted to put out. We were in control of the message. Today, the user's really in control of the message because a user searches to solve a problem. So when they come to your website, they're trying to see, do you have the solution to their problem? And if we don't offer the solution that they're looking for, then they're likely to go do another search and find another resource. So it's really less about what we want to say and far more about what users need to hear or need to find in order to solve their problem. And so your flow may be indicative that they aren't finding that help that they're looking for. So let's recap just a little bit, and let me share some resources that if you wanted to dive on any of these sessions further, and I should say that if you do have a specific question, you're welcome to put that in the chat box, and we'll try to answer that right after the session. So let's go a little bit deeper and go into some additional resources. Remember, the steps after the program is to outline your goals. People get frustrated when they go into Google Analytics without a goal. They try to absorb everything that it has to answer. So focus in by asking the right questions that help you get to your goal. Now, when we talk about choosing goals here, of course, we're talking about Google Analytics, which is almost going to answer almost every goal, answer every question. But remember that there's other opportunities to get data. If you're a local business serving a local area, Your Google My Business profile has a tremendous amount of data in it as well. If you're on the call today, if you're in the program today and you're a Google Ads advertiser, Google Ads has a tremendous amount of data as well. So choose the tools that are able to answer the questions that help you to get to your goals. And most importantly, measure the results and take action. One of the greatest things about being involved in digital media today is this instantaneous feedback, or nearly instantaneous feedback that we get. I mean, gone are the days where we buy a newspaper ad or a television ad and hope for the best and really go to bed not knowing whether it did what we were hoping that it did. Today, we launch an ad online, we launch a campaign online, and we're getting near instantaneous feedback. And we can test. We can do A/B tests of different ads. We can do A/B tests of different copy. We can test almost everything, and that feedback loop is perpetual. The key is just to read that feedback loop and adjust and optimize. Digital media is a lot like being a really great gardener. You're always pulling out the things that aren't working, and you're always replanting things to see if they work. If you're on the program today, and if I asked you, when was the last time you made even a moderately significant change on your website? And if the answer to that is 6 months, 9 months, or a year, then perhaps you're not taking advantage of that ability to optimize your digital media presence as powerfully as you can. There's a wonderful app that Google puts out. It's called Primer. And a lot of digital marketing lessons are created in kind of 5 or 6 or 7 slide little bites here. And I think this is a fantastic app. It's available in both the Apple Store and the Android Store. Download it. If you've got an extra 5 minutes and if you're waiting for somebody, or you've got an extra few minutes while you're on the treadmill, this is an absolutely fantastic way to stimulate your knowledge about digital marketing, and all kinds of topics are covered, from analytics to website optimization. And Google's new rebranded training center is called Skillshop. And in there, it's a one-stop training for almost everything digital, really for anyone who uses any of the Google professional tools and solutions. There's training here on Google Ads, Google Analytics, Google Business, and more. And the lessons here are categorized based on your experience, all the way from beginner to expert. And you can find this at g.co.skillshop. And I don't think there's a lot of people listening to the program who have an online store, but if there are lessons that are specific for people who run an e-commerce website. And you can find them at g.co/growmystore. And at YouTube, there's also a Grow with Google YouTube channel that has lessons just like the one you've gone through today, right now, and more in it. So go to YouTube and look for the Grow with Google YouTube channel, and you can find it at g.co/grow/quick-help. And of course, today's program is from Grow with Google. And Grow with Google not only has resources for business owners and marketing folks, it's also got resources for job seekers and teachers and people, entrepreneurs doing startups, and even people who are aspiring developers can find resources at Grow with Google. And you can find all of them at google.com/grow. Well, I hope today's content was valuable, and let's see if there's any questions that come up. And one question came up is, marketing only to people interested and prone to buying. Is this available to SMBs free? And is it free to nonprofits? Yes, Google Analytics is completely free. And again, depending on your website and depending on the complexity of your website, you probably are able to install Google Analytics on your own for free. If you use a common platform like Wix or WordPress, most of them come with plugins where you just drop the Google Analytics code into one place in your admin area, and then it will do a good amount of the heavy lifting for you. So for a lot of folks, it's going to be super simple. And we also talked about Google Ads for just a little bit, and there is a special Google Ads program for nonprofits, and it's called the Google Grant, and you can find more about that by Googling Google Grant. It's a fantastic program for nonprofit organizations. I think that is the only questions we have. So let me thank everybody for attending, Hope you got a lot of value out of today's programs and hope that you look for more valuable resources from Grow with Google. We have another session coming up on Friday. So look for another session from Grow with Google on Friday. Thank you all for attending.